to carry out this punishment upon this person.
Do you think that there's any kind of justification for people who might be Muslims, they read these ayat and ahadith, they come across these punishments, and obviously with your knowledge, you know that this is not in their hands, it's not meant for them to carry out, but they come across these ayat and ahadith and they just carry out like acts of terrorism, for example, on the street, based on these misunderstandings of these ayats? Like, do you see how people can fall into this?
I think that whenever Islam is not implemented properly, and whenever people don't take Islam from its proper sources, there is a danger of the rulings of Islam being misinterpreted and misunderstood. And I think that's just as true in Christianity, and it's just as true in Judaism, and there are plenty of examples of that throughout history. The act of committing acts of terror is in itself something for which there is a prescribed punishment in Islam. Allah Azza wa Jalla said the punishment of those people who wage war against Allah and His Messenger, and they cause corruption in the earth, and this includes like the highway robber, it includes the banditry, it includes people who commit like huge acts of terror and so on and so forth, and yuqattalu, that they be killed, أو يصلبوا, or crucified, أو تقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف, or their hands and feet cut off from opposite sides, أو ينفوا من الأرض, or expelled from the earth. The scholars mentioned that each one is according to the severity of the crime. And with regard to the crucifixion, they differed over whether it's done before the person is killed or whether it's done after, in a way of showing people the severity of this, because this is one of the worst kinds of crimes, the crimes that sort of tear at the fabric of the safety of the society, like banditry, people kidnapping people from the streets, robbing people, armed robberies, where people stop people who are traveling on a road and rob them or try to kill them, and likewise terrorism, where people really tear at the fabric of the safety of the society and destroy the lives of many people. Those people, that's one of the most severe punishments that exists in Islam. So I think ultimately everything can be misused. We see even things that are sort of considered to be basic sort of teachings in Western countries and so on. We see extreme groups come and misuse those teachings. We see in Christianity, extreme groups come and misuse the teaching of Christianity and use it for violence. Islam, every time Islam mentions, for example, jihad, or Islam mentions fighting of any kind, Islam typically always, you find a clear instruction in the same ayah or the following ayah not to go to extremes. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Fight those people who fought against you. Not fight innocent men and women and children on the streets. Fight the people who fought against you. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. Don't go over the limits. Don't go over the limits that are set by Allah. And that's a standard feature of whenever verses mention fighting, mention killing. And bear in mind, this fighting, killing is that which is done under the banner of the ruler, i.e. an organized army that is organized and that is given their instructions from the Waliul Amr, not vigilantism again. They are told, don't go to extremes. The Prophet told them not to kill the child, not to kill the woman, not to break down the monasteries and the churches and the synagogues where people are worshipping Allah, to leave the people alone, not to cut down the trees and so on and so forth. Islam came with regulations for this that supersede and are better than any existing regulations right now. Look at all this thing about the Geneva Convention and the rules of war and so on. Islam established fair and just rules of fighting and strongly tells everybody that when you fight, you don't go to extremes, you don't go over the limits. Allah does not love the people who go over the limits that they've been set. And I think that, again, the fact that Islam contains these things is problematic for some people, but they have to understand that Islam is a complete way of life. Have you ever seen a government, and apart from, we're talking about maybe the government of a tiny little island somewhere, but a significantly sized government that doesn't have an army? At the end of the day, we're talking about governments here. We're talking about a country that has a legitimate army. The difference being that army is given religious instruction, not political instruction.
Right.
Political instruction, I'll go and do what you want, you kill these people, I want you to make an example of them. There's no political instruction for fight. Instruction is religiously, you are not allowed to do this. Religiously, you're not allowed to do that. Your purpose for fighting is a religious purpose, not a political purpose, not because I want to have double the land that I have right now. It is a purpose of making the word of Allah the highest and the word of those who disbelieve the lowest. It's a topic for a whole, podcast, inshallah. But
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
it is really important to understand that the concept of fighting existing within Islam is actually something which provides safeguards that don't exist. And honestly, if you were to look at armies around the world today, and I want you to look at professional armies, like the likes of the United States, the UK, Australia, these are countries that have professional armies with laws that govern what their soldiers do. The abuses from those soldiers have been significant and consistent, not one-off.
True.
They have been regular and consistent time and time again in war after war. They've been convicted in their own courts of doing so.
Yeah.
So this is something really that ultimately people who are fighting need religious guidance.
Yeah.
It's not barbaric. It's that you say to somebody, when you go out and fight, first of all, that this is done as part of a legitimate army that is organized and that is given its instruction from the government of that Muslim country. Secondly, that you, under no circumstances, whether your commander tells you or your governor tells you or the ruler tells you, are you to kill innocent men, women, and children who are not people who are not fighting against you. You are not to, to attack people who are worshipping Allah in their private places of worship, and so on and so forth. That to me is something which we should be proud of, not something that we should be running away from and hiding behind. The fact that people may abuse that, I think, to be honest, people will look for any justification to do something. And anytime Islam is not implemented properly, it's open to
It's never
abuse.
the fault of Islam, it's the implementation of the people.
Absolutely. And it's our job to educate people about that and to stop that from happening. And that's, I believe it's important. I'm not a person who thinks that we should shy away from the problems that exist in our ummah today with young kids who fall into extremism and so on. We need to go out and tackle that. We need to show them that this is wrong, and we need to show them the evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah and the actions of the companions radiallahu anhum, which prove to us that this is not a part of Islam. And when we do that and we publicize it and we say so openly, that will naturally decrease the number of